Welcome to session 2 of Growing Leaders. This session is entitled Establishing Identity. We want to give you 3 things in this short video: the aims of the session, an overview of how the session works, and then some practical tips and pointers on how to run a really good session. So what are the aims of session 2? We want to continue to deepen those caring, trusting relationships between participants that were established during session 1, because the community is such a vital part of how we grow leaders. Secondly, we want to help participants view their relationship with God as central to their life and leadership. And thirdly, we want to explore cycles that hinder and cycles that foster growth in that relationship. Let me give you an overview of the session. In the business world, people are sometimes asked, how do you know someone's a leader? And the answer is, look behind them to see if anyone's following. That won't do for us in the Christian world. The key to know whether someone is a Christian leader is not to see if anyone's following, but to see who they are following, because Christians are first called to be disciples before leaders. And so this session is all about helping people to grow and develop in that relationship with God, secure in their identity in who they are. It's so easy as a leader for our relationship with God to get put on the back burner, to not receive the time and attention that it needs. But it's vital for Christian leaders to keep this relationship alive and going. So that's the reason why we don't dive on this second session straight into some leadership skills, but rather help the participants explore the spiritual disciplines that will make a difference to them continuing to grow in God's love and grace for them. We also offer them what we call a spiritual MOT, an opportunity to, in a systematic way, reflect on where they are in their relationship with God. Many participants say this is one of the most helpful things in the course. How the session actually works is that we begin by looking at John 15 and that lovely phrase that Christ offers to those who follow him, remain in me. We then consider cycles of grace and grief. These are 2 models about 2 different ways of living. And we try to help people realize that it's all too easy to live under what's called the cycle of grief, rather than to live in the cycle of grace. And then thirdly, the last part of this session is to look at some of those spiritual disciplines that are so vital for us if we want to keep on growing in that grace that God has offered to us in Christ. Well, at this point, I'd like to ask Lorraine again to offer us some practical tips on how to run this session well. Lorraine, whenever you are in a session where we're talking about a relationship with God, I suppose there's a huge potential for just increasing guilt in people's lives. How have you prevented that from happening?
Well, the main thing in this particular session is spiritual disciplines. So the question is, reflect on it yourself. Find out which are the ones actually you find easy and which ones you don't, and then bring those illustrations to the session and be vulnerable. Really be clear about which ones actually you find difficult. And then other people will be able to say difficult things too.
And how have you handled the cycle of grief, cycle of grace thing in a way which has been most helpful for people?
Again, it's being vulnerable. It's about giving your own personal stories and illustrations about when you've been operating in each of those different cycles and demonstrating it, really.
Now, quite often we've had people say to us, there's an awful lot of material in this. What have you done to help make sure you keep pace with the session?
Absolutely. It's all about preparation. It's all about knowing your people again. I couldn't stress it enough. There is a lot to get through, but be really clear about which bits are most relevant to the people you're working with. And it's all about preparation.
And what about timekeeping?
Make sure that actually when you're start on time, even if people aren't there. Make the breaks exactly when it is that you need to make that break, and be true to that as well as when you end. Now, how you work with the material in between is clearly between you and the co-leader. So really make sure that you cover the material, but obviously you can skip little bits if you need to. But make sure you start and finish.
Excellent. Now, just a little thing about those refreshment breaks that come in the middle of the session. How have you handled those?
The main thing again is how do you, carrying on that whole context of making people feel special. So we had lots of nutritious things as well as lots of yummy, chocolate and nice drinks and hot drinks.
And did you sort all that out, or did you?
I did, yeah.
You did?
Yeah.
That's incredibly impressive. I know other places have roped somebody else in to do that. Right. Okay. So there are ways of actually making people feel valued in as part of the course.
Totally. And it's about serving them.
Yeah. Great. Thanks, Lorraine. So in conclusion, this second session focuses on establishing identity. You'll need to be very careful in the way that you brief your mentors, because they're the ones who are going to help the participants do the spiritual MOT. So make sure they've got copies of the MOT and prepare them well for it so that they can offer the very best to the mentors. And please, do pray for life change for the participants as we go through the course. And the most fundamentally important life change is a growing relationship with God at the very centre of their life and leadership.